Welcome everyone to this roundtable, the Astro Priestesses roundtable for the solar month of Gemini. And it's a fun month. I mean, Gemini tends to be fun. we hope it's fun. And it's a time when we can maybe not take ourselves so seriously, to see what the humor is in things, that kind of thing. But before we actually move into that place, we're going to have a new moon in Taurus on the 19th of May. And it's so the moon and the sun and are conjunct with the asteroid, not asteroid, asterism called the Pleiades. And the Pleiades are at this time of year in a very special position in the sky. So if you happen to live between 23.5 degrees north or 23.5 degrees south of the equator, then you will experience what are called solar zenith days. And these are important in those latitudes because they don't have the extremes of seasons like we do further north or further south of the tropic. It's called the Tropic of Capricorn, the Tropic of Cancer. So there's a place in Mexico called Chichen Itza. They built a pyramid there called Kukulkan, and that pyramid is a serpent pyramid. And so when the sun rises at the equinox, it lights the serpent, and at the bottom of the pyramid is a big serpent's head, and then the steps that go up to the top of the pyramid get lit by the equinox sun. So you can see the undulating serpent going up. Well, at the solar zenith, the sun is directly overhead and no shadows are cast. They call them the days of no shadows, and there's 3 days that it's precise. So the 19th, 20th, and 21st, or sometimes it's the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. It just depends on, because the sun doesn't come back every 365 days. It comes back every 365 and a quarter days. So it shifts it slightly sometimes. But we're going to have the sun and the moon conjunct each other on a solar zenith day with this. And what the Mayans saw is that when the Pleiades were directly overhead at the solar zenith on the days of no shadows, it was putting the rattle of the snake in place. So they called the Pleiades Za'ab, T-Z-A-B, Za'ab. And when the rattle of the snake was in place with the sun activating the portal, then on the days of no shadows, then it was opening that stargate. And it would happen every 26,000 years, which is happening now. This just so happens to be happening now. They also built the solar zenith tubes, and that would go deep into the earth and into caves. And the only time those tubes would be lit was when the sun was directly overhead. So I did a video on that. I'll put it in the show notes so if you can see the images and more information about that. But this is a really powerful new moon for us to be tuning into, because the stargate's opening with the Pleiades. Then the sun moves right into Gemini right after that. And we also will have Mercury moving into Gemini on June 11th. So right with the Pleiades again. And it's really fascinating just to think about how they understood how to track this timing, and they could build a massive structure like a pyramid. Like they knew so much more than we're just starting to remember. So very exciting to feel into that. And I think that's enough for me to start out by saying. I'll just now turn this over because I know there's more to say about what's going on. So to whoever's next.
I was just noting that as the sun enters Gemini, about 6 hours later, the sun will trine Pluto in Aquarius. And then you were just mentioning when Mercury enters Gemini, well, just like right before that, like minutes before that, Mercury at the 29th and 59-minute degrees of Taurus will trine Pluto that just re-entered Capricorn. And so to me, that's kind of overlaying the energy of the Gemini and the Mercury piece with this trine to Pluto. So to me, it feels like there's something massively transformational wanting to happen through communication. kind of bringing all of this together. And Pluto always speaks to the underworld to me. So kind of bringing our communication deeper into the underworld, or maybe into the earth, or into ourselves in some way. So even though these moments, like the sun trine Pluto or Mercury trine Pluto, they only last a moment, a day, they're very quick transits. I always think of wherever the ingress of the sun is, it sets that tone for the whole month ahead. So I know for myself, I'll be preparing for that kind of, okay, how do I get to take this even deeper, all my thought processes even deeper into the underworld, and even that we're still kind of closing up this Mercury cycle in Taurus, that we just began a new Mercury cycle. We're already kind of in that underworld space with Mercury. So it feels like all of this connection to ancient history and this remembering and kind of recalling things and recalling story, it feels very central to this month ahead.
Oh, I love that. And that just also, like, going off of that, Nura, I so agree with everything you're saying. And I think it's so fascinating with the Gemini ingress, Sun at 0 degrees of Gemini, trining Pluto, retrograde. Also, Jupiter is right at the beginning of Taurus and making a square to, like, Jupiter's with the North Node and then making a square to Pluto. And we actually have this T-square. It's actually probably a fixed grand cross, because we have the lunar node, south node Scorpio, north node Taurus, Jupiter Taurus, and then we have Pluto at 0 Aquarius, and then right after that Mars is moving to 0 Leo, pretty in that area. And so there's all this kind of tense fixed energy, but wanting to kind of be this alchemical cauldron to really, like, catalyze us into something new. And I feel like with Jupiter with the North Node, particularly squaring Pluto in Aquarius at the beginning of Gemini season, this is like, I don't know, I feel Jupiter is really wanting to, we've been doing all this, like, transformative work, especially we're still rippling from that eclipse season and the Scorpio lunar eclipse. For me, I mean, it was conjunct my moon. So a lot came up that had been, like, really deep down in my psyche about my conditioning, some of my self-limiting beliefs, like where am I maybe holding like disempowering beliefs still that are just like from conditioning. And just I've been doing so much has been coming up to just be with it and let it alchemize. And I feel like now this Gemini season, which is all about new possibilities, opening up to the potential and the possibility that's there and the moment that it's really always been there, but we just previously haven't been able to connect with it due to kind of like blinders over our mind because of our conditioning. And I just feel like there's something really expansive opening up here. And Jupiter and Taurus, fixed Earth, squaring Pluto and Aquarius, fixed air, and Jupiter with the North Node. It's really wanting to Jupiter open up this new expansive possibility that we can ground in. So there's all this, I don't know, I'm just sensing all these new opportunities opening that we can connect with, and Gemini and ground in Taurus, that perhaps we can see things now. Our minds are maybe a little more open to see things in a new way that's there, like potential possibility that we just were blind to before.
I love that. And I was paying a lot of attention to this Grand Cross, because it's feeling like the new moon is also in the degree that is also like squaring this energy that is very powerful. And Pluto going back to Capricorn to say, like, what is it here that I need to still clean up from society? So we have like the ideas of humanity with Aquarius that sometimes can be very detached, and like Jupiter moving into Taurus is telling us the wisdom is in the body and your self-worth. I think there is a lot coming up with that for many people with the economy and so Jupiter in Taurus is going to tell us, like, what is it that we truly value from the inside out. And then with all the Leo energy that is already building when Mars move into Leo, and then later on will be Venus, and then Venus will stay there for a long time, but this later. But is this the heart is very important for that Aquarius new time that we are building now. Like this new humanity needs body. So because in the 5D reality, everything is amazing, but then when we bring it down, there is a reality check. Right? And then the Saturn in Pisces is still telling us, like, how do we root this wisdom that we have in stories with. So I love this. And even before recording, we were talking about the Mayan calendar. We were talking about now our Chichen Itza. It's like how all these stories are so important for us as human beings, and we forgot, and how in Gemini we can also create new stories. Like we have the right with this Leo, Mars in Leo, is like we shine with our own light, and we don't have to follow templates that are already out mode. And I feel very much that with Pluto in both Capricorn and Aquarius. It's like it's telling us, where are you too cold? Because both of these signs can be too cold. And where do you need a little bit more of warmth of your body? And with Taurus, and more of your heart with Leo, and then go deep with the South Node in Scorpio. So that Grand Cross is really moving a lot of things. And what I will invite people is to really go deep, because with Gemini, sometimes we can just playing with depth, right? Like it's not just playing with things that are, because sometimes we can also distract ourselves when we feel the wound. And I think the opportunity now is to really feel the deep feelings, to let them out and release and create something with that.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you. So I like to look at the signs like Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, Leo as about exploring the self. And you know, and I think that the reason they were originally called fixed signs is because they're in the middle of the season. If you start the season with the equinoxes and the solstices, then they're the middle part of the season, and they have the cross quarters and, you know, the halfway points and all of that that are in those signs. But if we think about, and Taurus, the opportunity that we have, and Jupiter moving into Taurus, and the nodes, and you know, the coming up to the North Node, it'll be exact on June 1st with the North Node, and that can only happen every so often, and it doesn't happen in Taurus all that often, because the nodes can only be in Taurus every 18. The North Node can only be in Taurus every 18 and a half years, and then Jupiter can only be in Taurus every 12 years. So I don't remember how long it's been, and I haven't looked it up, but I'm going to do that eventually. I'm going to do that because I'm thinking this is significant. So if humanity's destiny is tied to the North Node, and Jupiter's about expanding the vision, and also we're in the Gemini month and Gemini being the new world storyteller, how are we telling the new stories? I love that that's been brought up. And that the old stories don't necessarily serve us anymore. Some of them are extremely limiting and challenging. And so part of our opportunity is to tune into what is the new story we want to tell for our own life, as well as for the greater collective. And with Jupiter in the North Node, it's really about humanity's destiny, and how are we being more deeply self-reflective and experiencing pleasure and the ability to receive the beauty of life, and all of the things that we've talked about around Taurus before. This is big. This is an opportunity. And we have lived in a culture that has taught us it's more blessed to give than receive, as we've also talked about before. And so how do we get to that place where we can really open to receiving something new? It doesn't have to be the same old thing. So I'm feeling very, very inspired by that. And also another thought that occurred to me that I didn't mention is that as the sun enters Gemini, it's with, you know, at the 29 degree Taurus and the 0 degrees of Gemini, that is where the Pleiades are, and that is also the edge of a star configuration called the sacred hoop. Now, this means we won't be seeing it this time of year, but as the sun moves through the hoop, it's going to pass by the star and Aldebaran, and then it will get to the center of the hoop. And so this is a circle of stars that has a cross in the center. And at that center cross, where the plane of the Milky Way and the plane of the the plane of the galaxy and the plane of the solar system cross, that will be the June solstice. We'll talk more about that, but the sun's going to be going through the hoop for the next couple of months. So the sacred hoop of stars, that is just such a spectacular place to tune into. And of course, this isn't the time of year to really see that, but yeah, I guess I won't say that. Never mind. It's already passed, so we won't look at that. But the full moon's coming up on June 3rd, and that's in Sagittarius at 13 degrees. So opposite the star Aldebaran at 10 degrees, Gemini is the star Antares at 10 degrees Sagittarius, and the full moon is going to be with that star, and the sun will be with the Antares. I mean, Aldebaran and Antares are going to be lit up by this full moon, is what I'm trying to say. And they were the prime fiducial stars in ancient times. That's how they would mark off the constellations. And I always think of them as a stargate also, as a powerful, so they're being illuminated. The moon with Antares, the heart of the Scorpion. So we have the heart energy, and Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. So we have the mind. So the balancing of the heart and mind with the sun and moon right there. How powerful is that? So how are we connecting and allowing for both to be important, not one to be more important or less important? One of the things I shared earlier before we started recording is that Gemini saying is, it's not either or, it's both and more. So it's like, how are we connecting to both in the way that's going to be the most supportive and helpful and guide us into where we're moving towards? Then the last piece I'll share about the June, that's June full moon at 13 Sagittarius, is it's aligned with a place in the sky called the Great Attractor. I think it's exact at like 14 Sagittarius. And what it is that astronomers have found that there's this place in the sky that all the galaxies, everything is moving towards very fast, actually. I mean, we don't necessarily feel it, but we're not necessarily aware of it, but everything's being pulled towards it. So that's why they call it the Great Attractor. So I feel like with the moon, the full moon here, one of the questions we could ask is, what are we attracting? How are we vibrating within ourselves? What are we thinking about? What are we feeling? The heart and mind connection. And what are we focusing our energy, attention, intention on that we want to attract? And if there's things that we've been putting our attention on that we don't want to attract, maybe it's time to focus our attention and our feeling like, get excited, celebrate the things that are great for you. Get that higher vibrational heart energy going. So with that, I will turn it over to whoever feels inspired to go next.
I would love to talk about the story part, because it's like I didn't think about it before this conversation, and that's the powerful part of bringing people together and how we inspire each other. And with this full moon and Mercury conjunct Uranus, and then the next day Venus, like 2 days after, like 6th of May, Venus moves into Leo. It's like, how can we really tap into the creative power that we are? Like, we are the force of nature, and we are creating that reality. And I will say that is through the stories, but it's like this invitation to truly write something, paint something, and release that idea that I'm not creative, because I think every human being in this world is by right is fully creative, and how society has tried to put ourselves into boxes. And now this is the opportunity to say, break out free from that box, create your paintings, your stories, and just for the enjoyment, just for that Gemini playful experience of shining from there. And that Mercury with Uranus, after being retrograde in Taurus, so slow and so reflective, right? Like it's a sign that is very slow, and then also is retrograde. So I think we have maybe tried to have some projects and some ideas, but we needed this reset time with this inner time. And now when Mercury starts moving along and then conjunct Uranus, it's like connect with that higher mind to see what are you a vessel. So it's not only your intention, it's your intention together with the universal intention as well.
I love that, Mar. And I feel like with this Gemini full moon or Sagittarius full moon, yes, to everything, Kaylin and Mar, that you were sharing about the full moon, it feels like to me with the moon in Sagittarius, which is all about like expanding our horizons, and the sun in Gemini, which is about this new possibility that it really is. There's this invitation to expand into new possibilities here, and to maybe get out of our mind a little bit, and to Sagittarius. This is about like, and Nura, you said something before we start recording that like made me think about this. It is about like getting out of the mind and just getting into the direct experience of life. And Sagittarius, the wisdom comes from the journey, going out and experiencing life. And I feel like with this full moon, I mean, it's such a dynamic full moon. It's the full moon it's a wide orb, but it's squaring Saturn and Pisces. And so there's a T-square in the mutable signs, and I call them mutable signs, the multidimensional signs. They really open up quantum possibility and connecting in with new timelines, new trajectories that are already there and available for us. And with this full moon squaring Saturn and Pisces, I feel like it's supporting us to really connect in with that Saturn and Pisces energy, where we're being invited to ground in a higher dream, to ground in something from our divine inspiration, the higher realms. And there's this really powerful opportunity to ground in something that's really like divinely inspired here. And then also at the time of the full moon, we have Venus at the end of Cancer, who's going to be trining Neptune and Pisces. So then there's all this watery, creative energy here with, again, like just connecting in with the higher realms. And there's this really kind of creative, artistic energy with it. And then Mar, like you spoke about Mercury's conjunct Uranus, really aligning our mind with the higher mind, and they're in Taurus, so grounding it. And there's something so dynamic. And it really just, for me, I feel like the invitation is like, how can we see past our previous limitations with the way we've seen reality, and to go out and experience something new and expansive. And then, like you said, Mar, just a few days after that, Venus is going into Leo, and she's, oftentimes it depends how fast she's moving in her cycle, but she can go through a sign, in a month or under a month. But she's going to be in Leo through October, because she's going to go retrograde July 22nd to the beginning of September in Leo. But this Gemini season with Venus moving into Leo, we're starting to get initiated into the mysteries of self-love. Like, Kaylin, it makes me think of you, radical, radiant self-love. And Mara, like you said, opening up our creative energy and our ability to create more from a place of fun, like being in the flow, magnetizing, receiving in, opportunities through having fun, and that lighting up our creative energy. So And Gemini and Leo are sextiling signs. So Gemini and Leo are both about play and fun and not taking things too seriously. And so there's all of this energy we're being initiated into, I think, the mysteries of play and self-love. And yeah.
I love all of that. I feel like there are so many things just weaving together so nicely here, especially around the theme of creativity. It feels important to kind of speak to the person watching who maybe feels like, I'm not sure if I'm creative, because this time actually feels like the perfect sort of alchemical soup to actually help you do some creative soul retrieval. Because right as soon as Venus enters Leo, she's opposing Pluto, who's retrograde in Aquarius. So there's this opportunity to really face yourself in that space, like go down, do the retrieval of, maybe there's a part of your creative journey that has been repressed because of, having to go through life, like having the school of hard knocks has really been, the past couple thousand years for all of us, really, with so much going on in cultural distortions and just the repression of the feminine and in everybody, which I think of as also the repression of creativity and us seeing ourselves as conscious creators. So it's not your fault, right? Like if you don't feel creative, it's not like you did something bad or wrong. You're not broken. It's cultural. So it feels like you could really lean into this time and find the small ways where you can reclaim that. And anytime Pluto's involved, I'm thinking reclamation of power. There's a really beautiful book. It's called Dispelling Wetiko. It's by Paul Levy. And in it, he talks about how evil, essentially, one of his arguments is that evil comes from the repression of creativity. That even if you're not creating something for money, like that's, I think, one of the ultimate distortions that we have. It's like, oh, don't be an artist because then you're going to be broke your whole life, right? Like all of these kinds of things. Don't be an astrologer, then you're going to be broke, right? All of these things that are not true. And but even if you weren't creating something for money, imagine that you were just creating it for your own heart's pleasure and desire, and it felt good and it made you feel alive and excited to be here on earth and to be a human claiming your birthright. Like imagine that was the reason why you were creating it. It had nothing to do with your job or your title or money. So that feels like that's the part of the distortion that gets to go away. And it's this, continual societal effort. And I think it comes through what we endorse, like Jupiter and Taurus. What do we give our attention to? What do we value through what we give our most precious resources to, which is, money is one of them, but it's also our time, our attention. I would say most important is attention. So if you just give it some time and attention, you might be delightfully surprised with what wants to come through you.
Oh, I love that. And Nora, that makes me think of, because I've worked with this for several years now, this idea, like in transmuting through it, like, oh, and Mara, like you spoke about too, oh, I don't feel creative. And what I've discovered through my own just like experiential playing is that if I just create anything, just really for the sake of creating, it doesn't have to be good. I'm my Virgo South Node, so sometimes it's hard for me to do something if I feel like, it's not going to be good, but that's what I'm learning to move through in this lifetime. But just creating anything, just grabbing some watercolors or going outside, I'm here on the southern coast of Oregon now, to the beach and making, just with my hand drawing like some artwork in the sand, like when I'm just, or just dancing, right? Like it can be anything. If I create anything, it just aligns me with the vibration of creation and creativity. And then I can start creating anything in my life more easily. I've noticed that. So I always tell people, just create anything. Like it doesn't need to be good. It's not about that. It's like just getting in that flow of creativity.
And whose judgment of good is it anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If our heart's singing and we're delighted and whatever, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. That's what's important. And the thing is we're all co-creating our life in every moment of every day. We're all creating all the time. We are not creating. And I think people forget that too. It's like, oh, I'm not creative. I can't draw. I don't sing. I'm not artistic. I'm not this. I'm not that. But that is just a certain way of looking at creativity. How you interact with people, how you do, go about your day, how you're creating everything all the time in every moment. So how do we start celebrating the things that really, as you were saying, I think, Jamie, it's like, so our heart is just lit up and excited and not judging.
Yeah.
This is so good. And especially because Leo, Venus going into Leo, and we're going to have a whole 19-month cycle of Venus and Leo starting in August. It's like, as this Capricorn cycle is closing out, it's like, oh, the Leo mysteries are coming in to help lighten up the day. So I'm loving that. And then I just also think we maybe will want to talk a little bit about the new moon on January 17th. It's also when Saturn's going retrograde, but that it's going to be at 26 Gemini. That happens to be in a place in the sky inside the sacred hoop. So the sun and the moon are there, and we'll see the moon kind of approaching that, the waning moon in the morning sky approaching that point, but it'll be between the horns of the bull. And I say the bull because it's also known as Taurus, but it's not the sign of Taurus, because the sun and the moon are going to be in Gemini. That sign, seasonal sign, overlays most of, actually all but just a little tiny bit of the bull right now, because the Pleiades still have 29 degrees. One of the stars is still, a couple of the stars are still at 29 degrees Taurus. But the whole point being that it's also approaching that galactic cross. And the horns of the bull are where ancient cultures, when they could see a crescent moon, the new moon, the crescent new moon, they knew it was a turning of an age when it was near a seasonal point, when they saw that crescent new moon in between the horns of the bull. Now we'll probably see the crescent waning moon between the horns of the bull before it catches up to the sun. And then the waxing crescent moon will be after that. It'll be probably in the feet of the twins, is where that'll be visible in the evening sky. But the part of the thing about the bull was also, it was connected to the Elysian fields. And there's this whole thing about how this is a really powerful time. I'll put a link to an article that I wrote all about this on, so that if people want to know more about that, then they can get that information as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for everybody to help wrap this up.
I did want to just make one comment about the Saturn retrograde in Pisces, that because we were talking about the judgment around creativity before, and it does feel like this will be a really nice time. Saturn retrograde in Pisces is going to reflect on the energy of Virgo, which will naturally kind of stir up all of the inner judgments. But Pisces energy in one of its highest forms is about forgiveness and integration and closure. So we can really close the loop of old stories, and this, especially this happening in Gemini season, kind of pulling in that mutable energy. Remember that sometimes we'll be pulled into stories, not necessarily for us to like go deeper and like feel the heaviness of them, but just to love them and forgive them. Like we don't have to stay somewhere really long if it's very painful, or if it's not, fruitful in our lives. So this is actually where I think Saturn will help us kind of not go too far into the deep end, because Saturn brings a greater sense of control and composure and discipline and boundary. So it's like it is actually for that reason, a good time for shadow work, because we can go into the story, but not dwell unnecessarily. Like, this is where the discernment of Virgo will come in. How will you know when you've gone too far? I don't know if any of you have ever watched Frozen 2, but I have a daughter and we watch Disney movies. But there's that, the one part of the movie where she's like going deep, and she's going through this cave and she wants to go too deep, and it's like, how will you know when you've gone too far? Well, Saturn retrograde will want to teach you some lessons about that, especially when it comes to things like soul retrieval or shadow work, and the stories that you tell yourself and how long you stay in them. So it feels like a good season for all of that kind of beautiful work.
I love that. And just as you were sharing, I'm looking at the chart, and it looks like over Gemini season is when Venus is going to be at maximum elongation. meaning the farthest that she gets from the sun and her evening star cycle. So essentially what that means is she's high and bright in the sky. And this is kind of, a peak moment. And the Venus, this kind of grander 19-month Venus in Capricorn cycle that started in January of 2022, and it looks like it's going to be right at the end of Cancer. I'm just kind of eyeballing, looking at the chart, so I could be a little bit off there, but it looks like that's when the maximum elongation is going to be. I'm just kind of counting degrees in the chart here. But to me, I think this is so significant, and it looks like it's right around the Sagittarius full moon and right before Venus is going into Leo. But essentially, just what I'm gathering from this is I think it's so fascinating that the maximum elongation, because Venus is connected with the sun, this is Venus sun cycle, so Venus sun dance, that the sun is in Gemini, right? All about the mysteries of play and possibility and writing a new story. And like Venus will not be in Gemini, she's in Cancer at that time, but I personally have Venus in Gemini, so there's this energy of how to create from a place of play and fun and staying connected to the sweetness of life, even when things are dense and heavy. And I just feel like that's such great medicine for the sun there and Gemini and this Capricorn Venus cycle, that because I feel like a grander theme has been with this Venus and Capricorn cycle, how can we create? Venus, the creativity principle, right? How can we create more from a place of wholeness, as opposed to like, oh, I have to achieve and be productive, for this, to kind of get this like external sense of self-worth, because Venus is all about self-worth as well. And she's in nurturing Cancer, so nurturing Cancer and sun in playful Gemini. I just feel like there's this beautiful kind of peak of this Venus and Capricorn cycle about, it's like, yes, we're really kind of integrating the Capricorn. Where can work actually be fun and enjoyable and more easeful, with the Gemini playful sun, Venus and nurturing Cancer. I don't even know if I'm making sense, because I'm just tying all this together in the moment, but I think there's something really powerful about that.
Jamie, I just want to say it's June 4th on the exact maximum elongation.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
2909 Cancer, and goes into Leo the next day. So we'll still be very near maximum elongation as she goes into Leo. So that's brilliant. Thank you for that.
And something with this sense of completion that I think is very clear, that with the Saturn and the Venus cycle ending, I will weave again with the creativity that is the way to really heal the pain. Like when we do something, at least this has been in my own journey, when with that story, we create a painting and the painting is already out of ourselves. So is on the door, or maybe you just burn it. Maybe you don't even want to look at that anymore, but it's out of your system. There is something very healing, and it's really like the soul retrieval that Nura was saying about the creativity. Those stories are our medicine as well. Those suffering, if we alchemize within ourselves, this is also where we can hold the space for others, because we know from a presence that I've been there and I can support you because I know what it is like. It's not just a mental thing, it's a presence. So I will say that with this completion in Capricorn, there is the wisdom of experience that you can only have it if you have experienced something yourself. And though we start with that grand cross that is painful, so creating something just to get that pain out of the system, burn it, let it go, and embody your wisdom that pain brought to your life. I think that's very nice for creating a new cycle when Venus in Leo start a new 19-month cycle.
And when we have Gemini solar month, I would say one of the things that might be helpful is find ways to laugh. Laughing is super healing. And Gemini is all about, loves to laugh, loves the jokes, loves to see things and laugh at itself. So that's an opportunity that we have. So I think with that we may be complete, unless anybody else has something burning to say.
Well, you can always count on Gemini to laugh at a funeral. Inappropriate moments, but it's you know, the comedic relief.
And with Gemini being open to the synchronicity, you know, the magic, the synchronicities, the signs, the symbols that are all around.
Beautiful. So we hope you have a fun month and you find ways to laugh and to enjoy and to play, and also to whatever else needs to come through, that it will be, it's not either or, it's both and more.
Mm.